just go and kick this door or something. Oh, there he is. Okay, yeah, well, let's go. Let's let him roll him.
Great. I'll just start the recording. You'll see that notification come up momentarily that we are recording.
I don't see it.
Okay. Whenever you're ready.
There we go. Okay. All right, I'd like to call the meeting to order. Thank you very much. Nice warm summer day. People should be bike riding, but anyhow. So, Sarah, can we have the territorial acknowledgement read, please?
Thank you. We would like to begin our meeting by recognizing the First Nations, Métis, and Inuit peoples of Canada as traditional stewards of the land. The municipality is located within the boundary of Treaty 18, Region of 1818, which is the traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat-Wyandot peoples.
Great, and now the roll call, please, of the board members.
Carrie Eagleson.
Present.
Janet Finley.
I'm here.
Patrick Gourlay.
Present.
Gavin Leach.
Hi, everyone.
Carolyn Letourneau.
Present.
Andrew Sigwart. Mayor Soever.
Present.
Councillor Sampson.
Present.
I will note that Michael Schaefer sent his regrets.
Okay, we can now go to the approval of the agenda. Are there any items that anybody wants to add to the agenda? I don't see any. Oh, yeah, Sarah.
I just wanted to make one note, Mr. Chair. I had inadvertently not included an approval of one set of open minutes in this summary header here. It says July 8th. It should also say July 28th. So I've amended the resolution accordingly, but we should be approving the open session minutes from July 8th and the 28th.
Okay, you can help me when we get to that. I have to make sure I read it properly. So I need a motion that the agenda of August 5th, 2021 be adopted as circulated.
Also move.
This Carrie.
All right, Lauren, seconded by Carrie. Sarah, you can call that question.
Carrie Eagleson.
Yes.
Janet Finley.
Yes.
Patrick Gourlay.
Yes.
Gavin Leach.
Yes.
Carolyn Letourneau.
Yes.
Mayor Soever.
Yes.
Councillor Sampson.
Yes.
It's carried.
Excellent. Any declarations of pecuniary interest by any of the board members? I don't think we had any written ones submitted, Sarah, so if anybody has any that come up during the meeting, bring it to my attention and we'll make sure it's noted in the minutes. So now we go to the previous minutes. We've got a July 8th minutes that the board, so I need a motion of the board meeting minutes of July 8th, 2021, and the special meeting minutes of July 28th be adopted as circulated, unless anybody's got any revisions. No. Yeah, was that
I think that was Gavin.
Yeah.
Gavin? Okay, and seconded by?
I'll second it.
Okay, Sarah, you want to?
Carrie Eagleson.
Yes.
Janet Finley.
Yes.
Patrick Gourlay.
Yes.
Gavin Leach.
Yes.
Carolyn Letourneau.
Yes.
Mayor Soever.
Yes.
Councillor Sampson.
Yes.
That's carried.
Okay, so now, Sarah, we need to do the closed session minutes from July 8th and 28th, is that right?
That's correct.
Okay, so I need the motion, unless anybody's got an amendment, which if you do, we need to go into closed session and we can't do this, so I don't see any, so that we need a motion that the closed session board meeting minutes of July 8th and the special closed session board meeting minutes of July 28th be adopted as circulated.
I'll move that. It's Carrie.
Thank you, Gary.
I'm happy to second. It's Gavin.
Thanks, Gavin. Okay, Sarah.
Carrie Eagleson.
Yes.
Janet Finley.
Yes.
Patrick Gourlay.
Yes.
Gavin Leach.
Yes.
Carolyn Letourneau.
Yes.
Mayor Soever.
Yes.
Councillor Sampson.
Yes.
That's carried.
Okay, thank you. Now, we can go right into staff reports, deputations, and presentations. Sarah, B1.1, Stephanie Fletcher from University of Guelph. Be a student case study, naturalizing and restoring landscape gateway site. So, Stephanie, I think I see you on here somewhere. Yep, there
Hello.
you are. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. I think Sarah's going to put the presentation on.
I am. Thanks, Stephanie. I'll just, and feel free to prompt me accordingly.
Okay. Tag team. Love it. Okay. So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me to present this today. So I'm living in Thornbury now. I've been living here since 2020. And I am a horticulture student at the University of Guelph taking my diploma in horticulture. I'm a Master Gardener in training with the Grey Bruce Master Gardener chapter. And the subject that we're going to talk about today is naturalizing and restoring landscapes with respect to a case study that I have done on the Gateway site for the attainable housing here in Thornbury. Sarah, if you could flip to the next slide, that would be great. Thank you. So naturalizing and restoring landscapes is concerned with landscape ecology. The decisions and actions we make regarding building and development, which naturally has to occur now because humans inhabit more of the world than ever before, really must be thought of in tandem with regard to ecology sustainability, because we need to mitigate future effects of climate change and we have to provide a sustainable world for future generations. Sustainability in this context means deriving benefits from the actions. So benefits of restoring and naturalizing landscapes can be thought of benefits to humans in terms of social, economic and environmental. And so what I'm going to try and show through this presentation is to provide some stimulus to you as you begin to think about how you're building out the property at 171 King Street East and how using naturalizing and restoring landscapes principles can then provide sustainable ecology for you. Sarah, if you can flip to the next slide. So in order to sort of form my thinking, I looked at the residents' survey and the inputs the residents said that they would like, the hydrogeological report and the geotechnical report that was provided on the site, the official town plan, and I note there was an updated municipal tree bylaw from last year, I believe, and also the Grey County Climate Change Action Plan that was presented, that was discussed this year and just tabled in 2021. Okay, so what I'm going to talk about now really is about how green space infrastructure and low impact development can balance urban development. So the whole point around this, Sarah, if you can flip forward, please. Thank you. The whole point around this is not to say don't build. We acknowledge we have to build. We have to provide residences. We have to provide housing and think about future development and commercial and revenue. But the idea is that if we can do this in tandem and provide balance with green space, then residents also benefit on a social and an environmental perspective, and also towns benefit economically. When we think about green space, we think about national parks. That we have a number of them here in Canada, but green space definition actually goes right down in scale down to parkettes. So small patches of land that can provide pollinator highways or shade canopy for trees are also really within the definition of green space. What is newer, and certainly in Canada, I think about the large cities, Calgary, Montreal, Toronto, Vancouver, they have started now to value green space on a balance sheet. So you can actually value the green space attributed to tree canopy, for example, or vegetation, because those green space can actually give you benefits in terms of cost reduction. So if you think about the green space benefits that you would derive from adding in a canopy into your build at 171 King, they could be attached to these things. So with respect to social benefits, there is the immediate connection to nature. Actually, the World Health Organization recommends that everybody has access within 400 meters to a green space area where they can sit and that they can reflect. And that's I actually can attach that report if you wish. So connection to nature, physical and mental well-being. It is understood that with respect to mental well-being, it's not reducing the heat during the day that's so important, but it's actually reducing heat at night for residents. If residents get bad sleep, cities are more violent. It's actually a really interesting phenomenon. Promotion of play, obviously, children need green space, reduced crime, and community development. So those are some really key social benefits that we would want for all of our residents. From an environmental perspective, regulating stormwater flow is critical, abating pollution, and that goes in part to stormwater flow. If you get a lot of stormwater runoff, it can take toxins and pesticides and fertilizers from the ground and push them into the water, which actually in turn can pollute the water. Promoting biodiversity, cooling, tree canopy, vegetation canopy, and wildlife habitat. And from an economic perspective, there is an increase in property values. Again, reports indicate that the higher values have more green space attributed to them in terms of housing. Healthcare costs, economic revitalization, tourism, employment, and energy savings. So actually, to my mind, there are some real tangible economic benefits to incorporating green space into a plan for a site. Sarah, if you could flip forward. Thank you. So the hydrogeological survey that was provided mentioned low impact development capabilities within its recommendations. One of the, so let me backspace here. The development that is being proposed currently would reduce the treed area at the rear of the lot from nearly 50%, I believe, of the lot down to about 8 meters. What that will do is that will actually increase the stormwater, or will reduce the amount of water infiltration that would happen at the site. That's the report saying this. Now, what will happen is that that water needs to go somewhere, obviously. So it needs to. So they were recommending low impact development, which provides new technology solutions, because that's a real issue. Low impact development can incorporate green space design principles to supply benefits communities. That's what we just talked about. It can also encourage native plants, planting designs, and the job of maintaining that is actually well within a community group to be able to maintain green space areas as part of a mandate for a community area. In terms of total cost comparison, so this is always the emotional one, right? The first thing we think about is, well, it's going to cost more because it's new technologies or it's new thinking. There are probably enough case studies now to be able to show us here in Canada, and certainly I have a link for you for the US, to show that if you take the cost of installation plus a reduced cost of upkeep and maintenance for these areas, plus grant availability, and I point to the Climate Change Action Plan from Grey County, we good? It is perfectly possible that the total cost is feasible to actually put in, instead of just having the standard, what we have traditionally done, which would be asphalt paving. The replacement cost and the frequency of using HVAC and asphalt could be reduced by incorporating cooling areas, because the sun obviously beating down on that asphalt will tend to break it up sooner. Trees providing a natural cooling around a building would actually reduce the impact of using HVAC. So using it in tandem should reduce the replacement cost and should reduce the frequency of having to replace standard equipment. So, Sarah, thank you. So the challenges that I saw at 171 King, it's a degraded brownfield site, broken concrete and gravel, asphalt parking. Obviously that's not desirable, and that's not where it will end up at. And this was sort of one of my case study elements. The treed area we've talked about, that's 50% of the total space, but a portion of that has to be removed to allow for parking and building. The deforestation, so the way the slope is built, the elevation of the property from the rear to the front is higher on that treed area, and then it dips, and then you have more of a flattening area at the front. There is obviously a storm runoff issue throughout the property. The building itself, currently at 90,000 square feet, would have a sizable water runoff to manage into a main drain system. That will increase the runoff into the main town wastewater, and it will also remove water from the site. One of the things that we try to do when we think about ecological sustainability is to actually allow the rainwater to fall where it should on the site, and to provide a good enough base on the site to allow the rainwater to percolate slowly through the site. What that does is that will allow it to go into the Beaver River recharge area with clean filtered water. And I believe this site is on the location of the Nottawasaga watershed, and that should slow, clean and filter water and store it ready for the recharge area. So keeping the rain on the site is desirable. The easement at the front of the town is, I believe it's town land rather than attainable housing land, but it is parks manicured. Meaning we take a lawnmower and we manicure the grass. There is potentially an opportunity to allow that to go more natural. So those are the site challenges that I saw. So for consideration, Sarah, if you could pass forward, please. Thank you. So consideration then, the site surveys indicate glacial till and silty sand, and they also indicate perhaps that there wasn't enough soil on site, so soil would have to be built up anyway. The increase of stormwater runoff after removal of the canopy. Residents are requiring amenities to be included in the area. So it's not just 90,000 square feet, but they're also asking for storage, amenities, general storage, bike storage. There is the possibility, if we have the commercial base, that you would want public transport, waiting area, and then some kind of gardens. Now, it's not my job to say where those are going. What I'm trying to do here within the mandate of this is just to show you what could be possible if we were to put those amenities in this site as well. And then possibly the sculpture park at the front. So, in terms of the ideas for what potentially could be possible and for consideration on this site, a tree preservation inventory should be taken at that area at the back. So rather than just taking a straight line and eliminating the treed area, take an inventory and bring the parking in around that inventory to allow for natural shading. But make sure that the largest diameter at breast height trees are retained for maximum value retention and for maximum carbon sequester. Secondly, and I do have some links at the following slides, and Mr. Chair, if you can tell me to stop when I've had my time, okay? So, but secondly, to install permeable paving. Instead of asphalt paving, permeable paving throughout the parking areas would enable the capture and stalling in place of runoff of rainwater. It's actually designed to ease the burden on town wastewater runoff systems. And then incorporate rain gardens or conservation landscaping in patches throughout the area. And that would allow the rainwater that did run off to break, and we would cause a break. The rain gardens would fill up, and then they would percolate down into the ground in place. That would stop a portion of that rainfall running off the site as well. Obviously, for the big situations, bioretentive swale facilities may mean, and I don't know what the swales consist of here around this site, but incorporating bioretentive swale facilities mean that you've got inlet and outlets, but it also allows, again, larger rainfall situations to take the rain and allow it to percolate into the ground. Public transport, bike storage, all of those other storage facilities could incorporate green roof systems. I have incorporated links to other areas within this presentation that show bus parking, other storage areas can simply have green roof with sedum systems. They also stop the rain from coming down, from going onto the ground, and they'll incorporate that rain amount. And then rainwater harvesting from that main building could be captured into cisterns either above or below the ground and used for irrigation, or maybe even brown water recycling within those commercial buildings. And actually, the rainwater that comes down off the roof is deemed to be clean water. So whether or not it's potable will depend on any of the other filtration that you choose to put in there, but for sure it could be used for irrigation. Sarah, could you flip forward, please? And then just 3 more opportunities here. Green roofs again for perhaps installing a percentage of partially covered parking spaces. So when I spoke with Sharon, she'd mentioned perhaps some carpooling opportunities. Well, carpooling opportunities perhaps could have covered areas, and those areas again could be green roofs, and they take little maintenance, and that maintenance could be done by those community volunteer groups. Installing new trees at strategic points around the building would give a link for the perimeter trees to provide pathways to wildlife, but also, most importantly, for canopy shading, and that's for residents and visitors to the site. And using native plants as the largest percentage of vegetative cover and tree canopy would really help promote biodiversity and recirculation of wildlife and pollinators on that site. So before I would go into the next piece, which is really talking about more of each of those things, the reason I looked at doing this for this site was because having lived here in Thornbury for just a tiny little while, to me, this site would represent, this is the gateway to Thornbury. I think this is what we want people to come and see as they're driving in. They want to see something that has the same as it does in Thornbury here, which is a lot of green, a lot of verdant green space, but something that is also demonstrating the thinking forward and the thinking of balancing new urban development with new thinking about economic sustainability. Mayor, how am I doing? Sorry, Mayor. Mr. Chair, how am I doing?
We're doing okay. I think
You're doing okay? Another couple of minutes?
Yeah, I would say if you can give us a couple of minutes and then we'll have a discussion. How's that?
Okay, absolutely.
Thank you.
Okay, so if you could flip forward there, Sarah. Okay, so rainwater harvesting. What it does is it captures runoff from roofs and redirects it to holding tanks for reuse. The tanks can be above or below ground, but the reuse means reduction in town water consumption. It prevents erosion at the site of runoff. There's a lot of benefits to encouraging the reuse of rainwater, and particularly, I mean, we've seen July. July is going to be repeated, but the rainwater runoff was enormous, and it takes some of the pressure from the sewage runoff, and also if we can reduce the town water consumption of water, that actually would be really beneficial. So you see at the bottom, I have a rainwater systems design, construction and treatment, just as an example. There are a number of them around, but it gives you an idea of how to put one in terms of systems design. The second one, Sarah, if you wouldn't mind going forward, preserving and increasing tree vegetation and canopy cover. This cools the environment. Asphalt is extremely hot. It reduces the surface and the air temperatures, so it stops the urban heat island effect, and it provides shade through evapotranspiration, which is actually what we want the environment to be doing. So it cools the air. It means that people can sit underneath that area, so that in itself provides an area for people to visually sit and reflect. It enhances stormwater management and water quality. It reduces pavement maintenance. It improves air quality and reduces greenhouse emissions. So, and the biggest one, I think, for a building this size, if the shade canopy can be strategically placed, it could actually reduce HVAC requirements if they are if they're placed in those areas where the sun hits the building the most. It can actually reduce the surrounding air by 2 to 9 degrees Celsius, which is significant. Again, I have some references down there. I also have one from Vancouver which talks about shade inequity, and what it says is, you know, the most affluent areas have the most green area, and I think it's really important to be able to rebalance that. The next one is stormwater management, which I know is a thing here in Thornbury. So a green stormwater management system would help manage the impacts of stormwater drainage, not just taking it off-site, but actually facilitating absorption and treatment of stormwater close to where the rain falls. That is the goal. Cleaning and filtering the runoff, capturing the debris, reducing the impacts. You actually use vegetation to do that, and that's why green roofs would work, permeable paving would work, and rainwater gardens and conservation meadows would work. And those are ideal. And there's enough opportunity on this site. This site is nearly 2 acres in size, so there is enough opportunity on this site to make a significant difference in terms of capturing and managing that rainwater. And I feel that perhaps that would then be a really good showcase for encouraging residents to do that within Thornbury themselves. Thank you. So permeable paving, I'm not sure if any of you who've seen the permeable paving examples. I was actually really interested because I don't know enough about it, but it is a standard when it comes to low impact design for sustainable parking. This company here, this permeable paving company, is a Canadian company. I could have chosen any one of them, but one of their main value propositions was for a large area, which is what this would be, the install cost and the lifespan is about equal to standard asphalt. So I actually thought that was really very attractive, which is why I put this the reference down there. But the idea is that it absorbs rainwater where it lands. It's made from 100% recycled plastic. It can be used in tandem, so you don't have to use it 100% of the site. It has a long lifespan. And you can grow grass or sedum between those pavers. So actually, if you were to stand at the top of the building and look down, you would have even more of a green canopy that you'd be looking at. Green roofs for bus shelters, bike storage, and other outdoor buildings. I think I talked about that before. Again, there are some Canadian sites here. The Suprema.com is a Canadian site, but it is quite common now. I think this is a picture from Holland, maybe. It's quite common now to see sedum and other green roofs on top of bus shelters or shelters of some kind. They promote cooling, they clean the air. And then finally, the rainwater gardens and conservation meadows. Thank you, Sarah. This is really important to capture rain. So where you have a slope, you would want to have a rain garden to be able to capture the rain coming down the slope, to stop it in place, using the vegetation to filter it back into the ground. And that would then go dry in periods of drought, and they would fill up with rain again. And the plants that are used here are native plants. They are used to drought, they're used to rain, and actually once they're established, they can provide some really strong benefits. And that can take water from a slope. It can also take water directly from a downspout, as shown in the picture here, from a building. So potentially they could be sited at the front of the building, further than 10 feet away, I believe, maybe 12 feet. But they could be sited there and take the water away from the building. Okay. This is the current plan view. I believe you've all seen this, and this shows the reduction in treed area at the back. It shows there's an area at the front which I think the residents were hoping would be some kind of a sculpture park. That could be turned into a conservation meadow. The idea then would lessen the impact or the requirement on the town to provide upkeep and parks maintenance. It could also incorporate the easement at the very front of the property, and if there was a sculpture park or some kind of a community garden, it could be housed there. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for allowing me to do that. But I'm hoping that it provides some ideas that I think are attainable for the site, and I think that they are realistic, perhaps, for the site.
Thank you very much. Good subject of discussion today, because we're looking at some design guidelines for the site as well in this next item. So anybody got any questions? Carrie, yeah.
Yeah, thanks for your presentation. The permeable paving, how does that stand up with snow removable, snow plows, and things like that? Have you got information on that?
So yes, it's actually within that LID permeable paving site reference that I put in there. They do claim that it stands up perfectly well, and they have a number of case studies that show big commercial lots in Mississauga and areas around there where they have used snow removal. So it's both commercial and residential usage. Yes, it's a good question.
Yeah, who does the weeding when all the weeds grow up in between?
So that's another question that was asked. If you were to plant sedum in there, then that should actually stall the weeds as well. Or you could plant clover, which is in itself a native site.
Take some clover from my lawn.
Oh, and mine too.
Gavin, you're next. Carrie, is that it?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, yeah, Gavin.
Yeah, hi, thanks. My question was along the lines of Carrie's question, so I'll just say thanks for the presentation. All of that makes a lot of sense. New, if it can be integrated in the design and the cost. So thanks very much. Very interesting, and hopefully this information can be useful as the project unfolds.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
I do believe it's actually cheaper to do this at installation than it is to try and retrofit.
Yeah, no, we'd have to do this right out of the get-go, I think, or some of this right out of the get-go. And I think there is a reference in the design criteria that we've looked at already around green roofs. I think there is a reference to permeable pavement in the back. There's also a reference to green space, although you're suggesting a little bit more of a natural, just let it grow type thing. Yeah, okay. Gavin, any more? Janet, is your hands up? I'm having a hard time seeing all the hands here. Yep. No?
Yes.
Yep. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank our presenter very much for an excellent document, and I think it's worth a good hard look. And as Rob has mentioned, we have referenced some of those points in our design guidelines. But I'm wondering whether we could ask you to actually review those and perhaps make some suggestions of where we could alter some of the wording so that it reflects what you're suggesting.
I'd be delighted to. Absolutely.
Good. We can, Sarah, if you could shoot off the draft that we're looking at the next item, that would be helpful.
Certainly.
And then maybe you can get some comments to us when you have a shot at doing that. Anybody else? Just scrolling down here quickly. Janet, your hand's still up? Was that it for you, or do you have more?
Oh, no, I'm done. Thanks.
Okay. Alrighty, I think then, Madam Clerk, we need a motion to receive the item from Stephanie.
That's correct, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, so the motion is the Housing Corporation receives item B11, Stephanie Fletcher, University of Guelph Free Student Case Study, Naturalizing and Restoring Landscapes, Gateway Site for Information Purposes.
It's Carolyn. I'll move that.
Thank you. Seconded by?
Patrick will second.
Patrick, any more discussions, comments? Okay, I don't see any, so Sarah, we can call that question.
Carrie Eagleson?
Yes.
Oh, thank you. Janet Finley?
Yes.
Patrick Gourlay?
Yes.
Gavin Leach?
Yes.
Carolyn Letourneau?
Yes.
Mayor Soever?
Yes.
Councillor Sampson?
Yes.
That's carried.
Okay, good. Thank you very much, Stephanie.
Thank you so
good work,
much.
and we'll get the design guidelines that we're looking at next item to you, and you can take a look at those and maybe make some comments where we can, as Janet say, modify the language a bit to better suit what you think is doing the right thing.
Fantastic. Thank you so
Great.
much.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So next item, B1.2, swinging right into the design guidelines that have been worked on so extensively by our community group with the help of Eldon and Sharon and when she was with us. So Eldon, are you going to take this? Are you here? Yep, there he is. So Eldon, you have the floor.
Thank you.
Eldon, I think I'm getting some. Try that again. I'm
Oh,
hearing
can
your
you hear
voice
me?
coming in no, it's really muffled.
You're very loud and muffled, Eldon. Maybe the microphone
Loud,
is close to your mouth?
muffled.
That's better.
Is that better?
A little
Try
bit.
again.
How about now?
Not.
Ah. Try again one more time.
Hold on a second.
Oh, getting in the big headgear. Getting rid of that Apple stuff.
How about now?
Try
Is
that
that
again.
better?
Oh,
How's
One more
this?
time.
Testing?
Yeah, you're still buzzy. I think the mic might be too loud. You turn down your mic volume, maybe?
Oh, I have no idea how to do that.
Uh-oh.
Let me just see.
You sound better now.
yeah.
This is pretty far south, away from my voice.
Yeah.
If
put
you
it
go,
over.
if you go to your triple dots next to the chat and the participants and stuff, then there's
Yes.
device settings.
Yes. Okay.
Click on that.
Oh,
And
and then
Down
just-
at the where it says microphone, you can actually control how loud you want that to be.
oh,
Like noise suppression, you can actually have it high noise suppression so that you're not so loud. Or have it on auto.
hmm. How about now? Is that better?
Not much.
It's strange because I generally have a soft voice, so
Yeah, maybe just speak softly, and let's see if we can get through the meeting this way.
Sorry, I tried.
Yeah, no, that's good.
okay. Well, I'll speak lowly, and I do apologize for the if I am coming in extremely loud on this. But the guidelines that you see in front of you here were prepared. The original draft was prepared back in January, and we received some feedback as it related to some of the specifics of the guidelines themselves. And the real thrust of the guidelines was to help to establish a vision and an overall provide design direction for that successful proponent in terms of moving forward and creating that attainable housing project on the site itself. And we received a number of feedback, which included adding additional sections such as an interior space section, removing some of the color to help for in terms of visibility, changing and strengthening the font for greater clarity. So we tried to make a lot of those changes themselves, as well as respond to and add some additional items that were requested by comments that were raised or clarifications and edits in various locations. Just in general, the guidelines themselves provide both the a vision, lay out some general principles, and how design control is going to be implemented, and overall terminology interpretation and overall compliance. And then it breaks into subsections for consideration, which include private space design, which is really around the private realms on the site, the non-residential components of the building and how to treat those components, the interior space, accessible design, both in terms of barrier-free accessibility as well as movement and pedestrian and vehicular movement, looking at the public realm and public spaces, and then sustainability. And I actually appreciated the presentation that was before me. Wish I had the benefit of that information because there was a lot of great components, some of which we've already touched on in the guidelines, but some that I think are in line with practices that achieve a more resilient built form and a resilient development over time. I think being able to have some of that input, particularly in the sustainability section as well as throughout, I think that was a good suggestion by this committee. So I'm happy to answer any questions or go through any specifics of the guidelines that anyone wishes to discuss or review in detail.
Yeah, I think a lot of good work done here, Eldon, by you and the community group that was put together to provide some input to you. I agree. The previous presentation, I think, has some interesting insight. For instance, one of the design guidelines in your report says put the building as close to the street as possible. I think what we heard prior was, no, maybe you might not want to do that. So I think we want to sort of maybe think about that. I'm not sure what direction the board you're looking for from the board, and this is really, I guess, to Mylene and Ed, whether or not there's a little bit more time for us to noodle this. I know the board members received versions of this prior to the meeting, but I think a good read of it a couple of times, as I've had with it, is really helpful. And so that extra time might be useful for the board members before we make a final decision. But I'll be looking for Mylene and Ed to give us some insights as to what, when they want us to cut and fish bait, if you will, on the design guidelines here. But I see, Janet, your hand has popped up.
Yes, Mr. Chair, I wanted to compliment Eldon on the layout and the readability of this report. I thought that was excellent. Just a couple of points. One is that on page 3, we start off with the vision, Eldon, and we talk about the 4 stories and a one-story setback down to 3. But then on page 12, we're talking about from 3 to 5 stories for building height. So there's that little bit of inconsistency there. So I thought that might be addressed. And again, I just wanted to pick up on what Rob has said about the setbacks. We do talk about being close to the property edge a couple of times in the report. I don't believe that's what the design task force was saying when they talked about reducing the impact of the building. Visually, they wanted it pushed back. So I think we need to come to some idea of what kind of a setback would be best, and actually put that in the document. But, those are the only 2 comments that I had.
And I guess through you, Mr. Chair, just on that that particular comment about the setback, I know in our design, and I can hear my voice reverberating back to me, so I can tell I'm having issues technically on my end. So, again, I apologize. As it relates to the setback, I guess this is a discussion that amongst yourselves, I would like feedback, because I know your official plan policies encourage built form to be closer to the street, and what's been presented in this plan balances that objective while still having some breathing room pushing the building back. So it's still a built form that's closer. It's not a built form that is comparable to the other dwellings as you move further west, where they're quite set back from the street. So it is bringing that closer relationship, which helps with that sense of arrival and the presence, but still provides for soft landscaping, and still provides for tree planting. So I mean, we can relook at that, but the further you pull the building back, it has implications as it relates to available parking in the rear. So that's another consideration to balance out as it relates to what those objectives are and what you want to do on the site.
Janet? You have a follow-up, Janet? You're muted. You do.
But thank you.
Oh, that's it. Okay. Ed, your hand is up. Sorry.
Yes, I was just going to comment regarding your question on time to review. I do think we have a little time for the group to review and provide further feedback. We're still in the process of interviewing and selecting the advocate architect or the concept architect, and this would feed into their work. So there'll be a little time till they come on board, and I think we would have that ability if people wanted to take the time.
Okay, thanks, Ed. Ellen, do you have any comments in relation to the previous presentation around the setback and naturalized green space versus what maybe the design group had advised? Do you have any sort of general comment on that? Pros and cons, how that would work with what is already in that section of town?
Well, I like the idea, and I support the idea. I guess the question that I would put out there would be, this is a prime location, and typically in a gateway location, you want a building like this to be prominent. And I think there's a way in which you can balance the sustainable initiatives, infiltration, and opportunities for natural landscaping, and still achieve that prominence of the building. As your sense of arrival and your gateway into Thornbury, I think what I would seek, and perhaps that's the input from our previous presenter, is, what is that setback that would help to achieve that goal, while continuing to meet that objective of having a positive built form relationship as opposed to a hidden relationship from the streetscape.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? I know that I have been asked to present this proposal, or I guess the design guidelines, actually, to the Sustainability Committee. So that extra time that we might think of taking here that Ed talked about would give us a chance to, or at least me a chance to make that presentation to the Sustainability Committee and get their feedback as well. So I now have Carrie and Alar in that order.
I guess my question is in regard to the setback at the front and the size of parking we needed, and trying to keep as many of the trees in the back. And it's kind of a, how do we manage that, and what's appropriate? And I do like the idea of having natural, if you call drainage areas that are full of, like flowers and plants that help collect the rainwater without pushing it down the street. So I do like those techniques, but we've got a lot of huge forestation at the back that it'd be a shame to see that be torn down or ripped apart, just to give us a few more feet on the front, which is already concrete and gravel or whatever it is. So I think natural planting in the front and soft landscaping in the front would give us a good look and feel as we come into town. So, but it's a bit of a dilemma how much space you need.
Right, okay, thank you. Alar, and then I got Mylene next.
Yes, I'm looking at page 4. It says placeholder for massing model to be inserted. That's that one. What are we expecting there?
So that placeholder is for your successful proponent to insert their plan and their mass model within that space. So this is a bit of a living document. So once you have that, what we've developed is really just a concept to further the discussion. When you have a successful proponent and when they've developed that concept, it would fit into this space here.
Okay. And so, in terms of the layout of the units, um, so we've got different sizes there. Um, but I guess we're waiting for the details of those as well. And the um, with the need for the accessibility and the widths on the doorways and presumably in the bathrooms as well, are we going to be able to fit that into the 550 square feet?
So that's a great question. That's an architectural question that I couldn't give you offhand. I can tell you that those are minimum targets. Um, and those are the recommendations of the feedback that we received, from the urban design brief, that we should be achieving those minimum targets for those bedrooms. So I've taken the advice of those that have helped comment on the report, and I've included that recommendation for those minimum sizes as part of that. But for one bedroom, 550 square feet, it shouldn't be an issue to be able to achieve barrier-free accessibility in terms of washroom size. It's just prioritizing space internally in terms of both the bedroom size as well as your living dining space within those units.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Marlene?
So just to answer that last question, we've developed housing where units are one-bedroom units are as small as 430 square feet, barrier-free. Not recommending it as a minimum standard, but just to kind of identify that it is feasible. I wanted to just kind of the whole comment, and this is kind of in lieu of Sharon not being here and some of the conversations I managed to have with her about running this report by the Sustainability Committee. There was a lot of, I think there was representation from that committee in the community group that sat in to dictate the design guidelines. So I don't know how much overlap or redundancy there would be in running the full report rather than a concept plan by the Sustainability Committee might be. So I just kind of wanted to flag that. And I'm just scanning through the whole thing, going back to the unit sizes, 1,100 square feet for a 3-bedroom is large as a minimum requirement. So I was wondering whether it could be something that we could aim at kind of shrinking a little bit.
So, and what would be the size that maybe, Marlene, you've seen built in other similar projects?
As a minimum, I would say 950, not to say that we'd go there, but just to kind of identify it as a minimum and maybe aim for about 1,000 square feet for a 3-bed.
Yeah. Okay. So it sounds as though...
That's small.
Yeah, that is tiny.
I can tell you right now, my condo that I live in right now in Midtown Toronto is a 2-bedroom, and it's 1,200 square feet.
It's about how you allocate space, and if you hire a good enough architect that can allocate space efficiently, you'd be surprised how big it can feel if they design it right. But it like you said, they're minima, right, rather than exact square footage. So if we hire someone who can design a nice enough apartment that's that size, then great. And if not, then at least we can go bigger, right?
Okay, let's got Janet's hand up now.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things I was going to ask is, are we going to be sending these guidelines now back to the task force, the design task force? Is that the next step?
No, I don't think that is the next step. I think what Sharon did before she left was she did kind of a sign off with them, and they knew where this was going as it relates to the report is concerned. So I don't think that that's where it would go back. I don't mind. You're right. There is some cross-pollination between our design group and the Sustainability Committee of Council. Having said that, I'm prepared to go and at least let the Sustainability Committee know where we now stand. No, Janet, I think this is really in our hands now for us to think about and to make some final decisions on, um, and then probably or possibly, Marlene, you chime in, run this through the architect we will be engaging shortly to make sure that what's here is doable. I worry a wee bit that some of these guidelines might have a price tag that we don't necessarily want to see, and so some of them we may have to show some flexibility on, so that we don't get ourselves boxed into a final price tag that is a bit of a shocker. I'd rather know what options A, B, and C are in some of these, as opposed to here's set guideline and you can't vary from it. I think to the extent that the guideline has a cost component to it, we should be aware of that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think there's also a push for this guideline document, at least as it pertains to the exterior urban guide, like urban design, be part of the OPA, the official plan amendment application, and become a part of the official plan. So for us to identify the feasibility of it and the applicability of it and the cost of it, ahead of that submission that's going to be led by town planning, is going to be an important step.
Yeah, and I think, Janet, the intent was maybe some of these guidelines might drift into the policy that the town has for general application as well, and so we're going to be mindful as to how we help that happen, if indeed it should. But I think maybe for this meeting, we will receive what we've got here if we can, and then at a subsequent meeting of the board make a final determination on the criteria that's established here. If that's, Janet, your hands come up, I think that would be my suggestion, unless anybody else has got a better idea. Go ahead, Janet.
I just wanted you to note, Mr. Chair, that on page 11, the report does talk about the need to have terminology for the guidelines referenced with respect to encouraging versus requiring, right. And there are actually three types of guidelines that they're recommending. So I don't really see that this report needs to be followed in any exact way, unless it's something that's identified as a shall or a will. And I didn't see too many of those actually in this document.
Yep. That's right. There were not. That's right. There were not a lot of shalls and wills. There were mays and suggests, or whatever the third category was. Yeah, so
I wouldn't be too scared about using the document. I think it's a lot of great concepts, but I don't think they're strict in any sense, except for, as I say, and I don't really think maybe Eldon, you can help, but I don't remember seeing too many of those shalls, out shall.
So if I can clarify on that, so one of the comments in the feedback from that we received was that should and mays should be changed to shall and wills. So throughout the document, it has been strengthened. So if there is concern about the strength of language where it uses words like storage signage will utilize durable waterproof materials, and ground floor commercial design will reflect, I would we can take a step back from that and go back to our previous language where we identified areas where it was more of a should or may in those circumstances. But there has been a concerted effort to strengthen it throughout.
Maybe
as per the
Janet,
feedback I received.
yeah, maybe Janet and Ellen, this is an exercise the board members can do when they go and read this document for the second and third time again, to go over it, and if there are areas where the may should be wills and the wills should be mays, maybe that's something we can discuss in more detail at the next meeting. Did I see Mylene's hand pop up on that comment?
Yeah, but I think that what you said is perfectly fine. I think there are some there should be some wills, right? Like the step back, for example, above 3-story. I don't know that anyone will accept that being a may.
Right.
So most of the things will probably be mays, but there are some real concerns that I think are easy to accommodate and will be important for the town and the design of the building to actually be stronger language.
Right. Gavin?
Thanks. Just quickly to pick up on something Ed said earlier, which is that this will feed into what an architect will create as far as design goes. Am I wrong to say that, I mean, to a certain extent, this document will, they will be read together, in other words, right? And I don't know, and to the extent that your comment, Eldon, that there was a living document, does this have to be finalized before we engage an architect, or is it more, can they evolve together? Seems to me that makes sense.
I guess to respond to that, it's completely up to you. Like, this document is really the Attainable Housing Corporation's tool. So it is in your control as to whether it stays fixed and you direct an architect or the contractor or other members of the construction team to adhere to it closely, or if you choose to work with them to modify or soften as you go through the process and determine constraints or issues or things that challenge the viability of a project. But it, at the very least, establishes a framework to which that conversation can happen.
Yeah, I think this is a really, really good start. And now we're going to be in the overlapping part. And then once we get to submit a site plan in for the zoning and the official plan amendment, then it'll get, like, the guidelines will be finalized, and then the architectural drawings will be the living document. But we're definitely, like, leaving the part one, and then there's going to be this intermittent part. And then, yeah.
So, Mylene, if we received this report but didn't, the other motion that's recommended here is that we adopt the guidelines. I'm just not comfortable that the board's ready to adopt it yet. So I think we should receive it. I think we can endorse it, but maybe not adopt it yet, if some more stronger actions required than just receiving it.
Yeah, I would recommend, I don't know if you need a board motion for this, but if we can release these guidelines to the shortlisted architectural proponents in the next steps of our architectural selection, that might be a very helpful tool in identifying who might be the best fit and creating that massing that goes on page 4.
Yeah, so maybe then if we were to endorse it in principle, and subject to review by the board at a later date, and allow the document to be released to the architectural firms that are being considered. How's that?
That works to me.
Sarah, were you able to capture that? Anybody else got any words of wisdom around what our actions should be? But I think that would probably get us going in the right direction.
I'm just crafting a motion based on that feedback.
Right, so we were going to receive it, right, and endorse in principle pending further review by the board, and direct SHS to release the document to the architectural firms being considered, the shortlisted architectural firms. Yeah, that's fine.
Janet is part of our selection committee as your board representative. I just wanted to check in with her and see if she thinks this is suitable.
Yeah, it sounds good.
Great.
Okay, so the motion we're going to look to move on here is that the Housing Corporation receives item B 1.2 Eldon Theodore MHBC Planning, Urban Design and Landscape Architecture, and endorses the same in principle pending further review at a subsequent board meeting, and directs SHS Consulting to release the document to the shortlisted architectural firms being considered.
Mr. Chair, if I can just make one amendment, I just noticed we should have in here regarding gateway site design guidelines. My apologies, I missed that from the original motion.
No problem. So do I have a mover and seconder for that?
I'll move. It's Gavin.
Thanks, Gavin. Seconded by?
I can second that. It's Janet.
Thanks, Janet. Any more comments or questions on this motion? I don't see any, so Sarah, we can call that question.
Thank you. Carrie Eagleson?
Yes.
Janet Finley?
Yes.
Patrick Gourlay?
Yes.
Gavin Leach?
Yes.
Carolyn Letourneau?
Yes.
Mayor Soever?
Yes.
Councillor Sampson?
Yes.
That's carried.
That's great. Thank you, Eldon. A lot of good work by you and Sharon when she was here with us, of course, and then the group of citizens we had engaged in this. And I was actually, when I read the document, I was quite impressed with the amount of work that was done. So thank you for doing that. And a little bit more to be done, I guess, before we get final stamp of approval, but I think we're heading in the right direction. Now, if we can just figure out where the building sits on the street, we'd be okay.
Thank you all. Appreciate it.
All right.
Have a great afternoon.
All right, same to you. So, any public comments, Sarah?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. None were received.
Right on. So we're now moving to the annual general meeting notice. Blue Mountains Housing Corporation provides notices AGM scheduled for September 2nd and requests the notice be provided to council for the town of Blue Mountains for information purposes. So we're having an annual meeting coming up on September 2nd. We got to issue our notice, and since we have a majority shareholder, well, the only shareholder, we need to provide that notice. Sorry, that's not correct. They're not the only shareholder. They're the majority membership owners. There are other members. Other members are sitting here in this room virtually. So do I have a motion then for this notice, to approve this notice and to issue it?
Also move.
Thanks, Laura. Seconded.
I'll second it, Carrie.
Okay. Comments, questions? Everybody around for September 2nd, I hope. All right, Sarah, do you want to call that question, please?
Carrie Eagleson?
Yes.
Janet Finley?
Yes.
Patrick Gourlay?
Yes.
Gavin Leach?
Yes.
Carolyn Letourneau?
Yes.
Mayor Soever?
Yes.
Councillor Sampson?
Yes.
That's carried.
Okay, and the next item is our variance report. Carrie, are you doing this one for us now that Sharon's on around?
I guess I am. There's really, did you everybody get the copy of the financials? Here they are. Really not much change. There's hardly been any transactions. The only thing that of note would have been the payout of vacation pay to Sharon and on when she left. So that was a fairly significant number. But other than that, there's really been little change. We did get, I think we got all our annual returns filed by KPMG. So that's going to really release the money from the government was holding up HST refunds for us. And so that should now be in the works and we should now receive that. So that was the other change that's going on. And unless anybody else has got any questions, we don't need to spend a lot of time on financials at this point.
Any questions? I don't see any, Carrie. So you need a motion to receive this report? Is that what we need?
Yes, I do.
Well, and we can get one if I can get a mover and seconder, if you'd like to move it.
I can move it.
Seconded by?
Patrick will second.
Thanks, Patrick. Sarah, do you want to call that question?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Carrie Eagleson?
Yes.
Janet Finley?
Yes.
Patrick Gourlay?
Yes.
Gavin Leach?
Yes.
Carolyn Letourneau?
Yes.
Mayor Soever?
Yes.
Councillor Sampson?
Yes.
Okay, that's carried.
Under correspondence, one from Bruce Taylor. Gateway sustainability designs, calling for a green roof. I think if Bruce were to see the design criteria, I don't think it's a must, Janet, is it? But it's a may or should. But do you have a comment on this letter from Bruce?
Actually, I never saw this this particular document.
Ah,
Um, I was going to actually ask Sarah earlier today, and then I forgot to follow up, but I haven't seen it yet. No.
okay. So do you want to? Well, we can just defer this to the next meeting. I don't think that Bruce needs an urgent reply, and we may find that it's contained in our design guidelines. So, given that, Sarah, why don't we defer this to the next meeting?
Okay.
Do you think could Sarah just send it around again if
Yep.
she doesn't
Yep.
mind? Thank you.
Yeah, we'll do that. So we have a long list, or non-long, we have a list of items for future discussion, but since we need to go into closed session to deal with with that item, and I think there'll be significant discussion of board members then, I'd rather we go to section F right immediately. I do have a 5 o'clock phone call that I cannot miss, unfortunately, but if we can have a motion to, with regard to the act, the Municipal Act, that the Housing Corporation does now move into closed session in order to address trade secret or scientific, technical, commercial, or financial information that belongs to the board and has monetary value or potential monetary value, and with regards to the financial strategy for the Gateway site. I need a motion then.
Also move.
Laura, and seconded by
I'll second this, Gavin.
Gavin, I think, right? Okay, so Sarah, do you want to call that question?
Carrie Eagleson,
Yes.
Janet Finley,
Yes.
Patrick Gourlay,
Yes.
Gavin Leach. Gavin,
Yes, sorry, yeah.
Carolyn Letourneau,
Yes.
Mayor Soever,
Yes.
Councillor Sampson.
Yes.
Okay, that's carried.
Okay, everyone, we're going into closed session at 3:45, 44. And we'll see you on the other side. I'm sure you know how to do that. You sign off here and you sign into the closed session connection. Okay, folks, see you then. When you see quorum, Sarah, you can do the roll call.
Okay. I'm sorry if anyone was just speaking to me. I didn't have my headphones on. I apologize.
That's okay. You can do the roll call. I think we're ready to go.
Okay, thank you. Carrie Eagleson,
Present.
Janet Finley,
Yes, present.
Patrick Gourlay,
Present.
Gavin Leach,
Present.
Carolyn Letourneau,
Present.
Andrew Sigwart, Mayor Soever,
Present.
Councillor Sampson.
Present.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. The board met in closed session in regards to a financing strategy for Gateway site and gave some direction to SHS and a subcommittee of the board as it relates to the financial strategy for the Gateway site. And Sarah, do we have anything else here on our agenda other than the closing up section?
We should just
Meeting.
note, sorry,
Mhm.
the new and unfinished business we did skip over. I just had a few items identified for the next meeting.
Right, code of conduct and the letter from that we deferred as well, right?
And also, I wasn't sure if the design, if we think the design guidelines can
Yeah, that's-
tentatively placed on.
Probably should come back just so that people can have a chance to noodle that further. That's great.
Okay, perfect.
Okay, next meeting date, September 2nd, which is the AGM, and September 2nd for a board meeting as well. And I now need a motion that the Housing Corporation adjourn at 4:50 p.m. to meet again at the call of chair.
I so move. That?
Thanks, Janet.
I'll second it, Gavin.
Thanks, Gavin. Okay, Sarah?
Carrie Eagleson,
Yes.
Janet Finley,
Yes.
Patrick Gourlay,
Yes.
Gavin Leach,
Yes.
Carolyn Letourneau,
Yes.
Mayor Soever,
Yes.
Councillor Sampson.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks,
Have a
have
good
good one.
weekend.
Thank you. Thanks, Sarah.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.